Okay, we are live. This is August 16th, 2026. I believe it's Elvis's death day. And I think Madonna's birthday. We look at dates a lot for some reason. Well, for a very valid reason. But it's always interesting. Elvis's death day, 8/16, at the age of 42. And I haven't really kept up with a lot of the Elvis Trump stuff that Jurassic Liars talks about quite a bit. But I wonder how much longer he's going to remain a viable and relevant character on the world stage. Time is just flying. And Trump is expiring pretty quickly as well. I wonder what's going to happen with all the Trump derangement once he's no longer president. Are these people going to have some Trump sized void in their lives? It's a lot of investment. If you think about it in terms of just pure, to use Robert Monroe's term, loosh. If you look at it in terms of the sheer amount of loosh extraction, Trump has been um, quite the magnet for attention and focus and energy, negative and positive. And that's one of the things about, in general, about manipulation and manipulators is the attention they get is the point. It doesn't matter if it's bad or if it's good. And oftentimes it's easier to get negative attention, less effort. And today, more than ever, you have an audience for every type of provocation, clickbait, engagement bait. And that's probably the bane of Trutherville, is that any attempt for an organized or semi-organized network of people who don't trust what they're saying has been completely subverted because it's just awash with grifters and attention seekers. No objectivity on the world stage. This is live from Realville, Sunday, Ips Deprogram. King Ravana says Sean Penn and Madonna wedding day today. Oh, they go, okay. Yeah, useless trivia for the most part, but maybe not. It was on my mind because I'm working again on mind maps. And I've got something here. I mean, we talk about the twin timelines. That is the one we live on, past, present, future, everything's kind of linear. Future's unknown, past is history, the present is what we experience and also what we see through the news as it's covered, quote, live. But then there's this secondary script, the one that has a sequence of events that will happen. And there are people who scoff at the idea that there's any pre-planned events, which is just a failure of imagination. Because the predictive programming or the reinforcement program for any PSYOP in general, any simulated event, is proof positive the event was scheduled in advance. Like, that's not a huge leap. So we have this secondary timeline of pre-planned events that insert themselves, they're interjected into the daily experience that we have through news, media, entertainment, and the like. These fake stories are the ones that are engineered. They're specifically engineered to get your attention and to make you fight against the other side. The triangulated structure ensures this is the case. The remainder of the news coverage, and all the commentary, all the opinion pieces bounce off the big shiny object of the day, the big shiny being the whatever it is they're presenting. It doesn't always have to be a terror attack, but they create quite a lot of drama. I mean, last week we were talking about the debate, really a fake debate between Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson, and everyone who watched that debate went along with their cognitive bias. Because if you're going strictly off what debates are for, you would say Andrew won because Candace provided no evidence and had no firm claim. But her fans say she won, his fans say he won. And the fact of it is, neither won, because the entire thing begins on a false premise. But it's been very interesting to watch people fighting over this. And we're getting close to the first hoax-aversary, which I'm very much looking forward to. And I'll be releasing a second edition of the handbook for the recently deprogrammed to go along with that. And the book is designed to make someone aware of the program, which the program is the secondary timeline, the fake events. So there's this mistaken notion or presumption that a lot of conspiracy theorists have that these things are just happening on the fly, these influence operations or psychological operations. And no, that's the ruse. So if you're reacting to a breaking news story and you're on the edge of your seat, it's not a breaking story. It's actually pretty stale and old, and they're just presenting it as new. It's so farcical. So there's absolutely no reason to be reactive at this stage. But the handbook is there to help differentiate between the timeline we live on and the one that enters our daily experience. And we delineate between the two, but then you look back at the past and what happens? Well, the past is a mix of real and all the fake stuff because it's never corrected. Occasionally, the media will have some kind of performative exposure of somebody who lied or faked something. Like you got your Jussie Smollett, and I guess, is there anybody else? Lion Brian Williams years ago, but there are very few instances you can find where there's an actual, like mea culpa, like, oh, we screwed up. There isn't any. And so it goes unchecked. Now, that secondary timeline consists of simulated events. Now, the fact that they're simulating events isn't in question here. The only thing that seems to be a point of contention is whether the entertainment propaganda that is synchronized with the fake events is doing so by design. And we've made the case. It's overwhelming. The preponderance of evidence is on our side. Anyone who denies this is simply a reality denialist, because this is not a conspiracy theory. The synchronization between entertainment and news in the performance of government psyops is systemic. The fakery is built in, it's structural. But there are people who will say that's just a coincidence. And I'm not debating with those people. I say leave them in the dark, because we're approaching this next stage here. There will be a shift or a shock, perhaps, a paradigm shock. Something you can look at it as the auto hoaxer 9/11. We have something planned. It'll happen probably sometime in the next year, where it will be very difficult to ignore what we're actually describing. But there's another element to it that I haven't really focused on heavily, but I will make it a big part of the update to the handbook, and it's this third element. So we all agree that reality exists, except for the Mandela effect. There's still some of those people. We agree that there is a past, present, future, and it's objectively so. It's real. On top of that, the overlay of fake stuff merges with it, so we're in what you would call hyper reality. And you can dispute the concurrent released synchronized entertainment that reinforces the fake news if you want. You can say, oh, that's just a coincidence, which is a non-explanation. It's like, yeah, obviously it's a coincidence. We're saying it's engineered. But there's a third element here that I haven't hyper-focused on, and I'll just briefly touch on it. And it's simply that there are drills, mass casualty simulations that involve many different agencies that also correspond to each fake event. So it's easy for people to hand wave away the alignment between entertainment, because they'll say, oh, well, you're cherry picking or it's hindsight bias, which for us, it's not. We are recognizing that this model has predictive capability, so we're actually using some foresight here. But the drills that go along with fake events represent another element here. You could say a third timeline. And obviously drills are coordinated in advance. So now you're looking at mass casualty simulations on the regular coinciding with fake events that coincide with big entertainment. And that is not something you can just so easily pretend not to see. And the more I'm synchronizing these, the more I'm realizing that not only are we identifying metascriptors, the propagandists working for the PSYOP entertainment complex, but now we're getting into the civilian aspects, the police, the military, all these other agencies that are also intertwined with it. I mean, this is a mind war. And it has been going on since the inception of media. I think it's a continuation of religion. It's about worldview. But we have a new edition of the book coming out very soon. And we have I think, a really entertaining year up ahead to look forward to. Joined by Penguin Doctor, Michael Lito, Clockwork, Aspect Monolith, Scotty Smith. Squeech says, "Is it over for the USA?" Um, I don't know. We're talking about a fictional universe here. We're talking about a mythology. Like, I've been wondering about this whole thing anyway, because I've been talking to a lot of people who are like nationalistic or concerned about their tribe, and I'm starting to really question the validity of caring so much about constructs that don't even exist, because the global scope of the PSYOP entertainment complex kind of renders all these other things irrelevant. We have one government, big G. Then you have all your little g governments. And all of these little governments are on the world stage, which again, the world stage is real, but then it's augmented by the program, by the metascript. And so at this point, what are you actually defending? If you're like chanting USA or Patriot, what are you defending? A bunch of brainwashed politicians, a fake worldview, a system built on, there are a lot of people with great intentions, sure. But I'm just saying, you say, is it over for the USA? I'm saying, I don't know how to answer that really. Like, which USA? Nate says, arm the raft, the invasion has begun. Yes. And another point too, okay, I'm not living in history. And that's a point I've been making lately, because you can hear, like, you'll hear the feminists say, oh, it's his story, like, male dominated patriarchy, but that's not actually accurate. It's Big Brother's story. And when you recognize that the fake news accumulates and becomes fake history, and we're looking at 60 years of coordinated simulations that have utterly warped our history is fake. So if you don't live in that, if you stepped outside of it, are you actually a part of it? How attached are you to it? So I'm not actually living in their history. And then I see these storylines that people have, like, oh, our group is under attack by this group, and they're bringing in that group to kill us. And I'm just thinking, okay, you're caught in subplots. You're buying too much, and you're too deeply into the script. You're immersed in fake news, in simulation. So I'm not in the simulation. I left the Truman Show. So he says, is it over for the USA? It's like, you mean, is it over for the Truman Show? Like, I'm not in it. Squeech says the true USA died after 1945. Yeah, that sounds like some kind of J-pill thing. Let me guess. 1945 has something to do with Israel or something. Like, look, if you're a J-pillar, this is not the channel for you. And I'm making a point, obviously, of putting you in timeout and banning you for 5 minutes so you can come back and bitch about it. Because we want to make sure that the division between the world stagers and the off-world stagers is very clear. Like, you can't sit with us. And you can go tell your friends. Because we don't need brainwashees. We're on a different tier. What's up, Sync Lloyd? Thank you for joining. We do have a few individuals who are still brainwashed that we keep under observation. And when I say brainwashed, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but if you are living in a cult, you're brainwashed. If you're in a fanatical paradigm that is built upon the belief that the past events that we talk about, our history, that if you believe these things are real, that frames your perspective, well, yeah, you're in an alt universe. You're in what we could consider to be an alternate reality game. Very interesting, Squeech. It's only interesting because these people are like, I don't think they're paid agents, but I communicate with them all the time. I see them all the time. And I call them J-pillars because red pill describes the conspiratorial version of the world, but the conspiracies are always science fiction-y. Or they have some kind of religious bias, like the Satanists are eating our children and they rule the world. or the Illuminati have taken over. These are all, cool stories, but they're just fictions. But they're not harmless, or they're not apolitical, I should say, because it's all just euphemism and it all points to one central scapegoat. Does that mean the scapegoat's real? Well, what are you scapegoating them for? Like, so this guy Squeech who's coming in here, clearly just by his code, because none of these people can speak directly. They speak in euphemism, in code. So Squeech comes in here to bitch about Israel, and it's like, well, what did they actually do to you? Like, what event in history? Or, like, they'll say, well, oh, they killed Jesus. They killed JFK. They 9/11'd us. They killed Charlie Kirk. So they have like a list of crimes that they're ascribing collective guilt to this other group. And they go further. They say, this group is killing us. We're being genocided. And I'm like, well, I'm looking at this whole picture and it's just that I'm like, wait, how can you have a scapegoat if they didn't do anything? The scapegoat's innocent because these things you're attributing to them are fictions. Like I'll have these people and they always play these like Socratic irony, playing dumb. Well, who did 9/11? Stanley Kubrick, James Cameron, Tom Clancy, Hollywood, the government, entertainment complex. Like there's not an actual tragedy. There's no crime there. 9/11 was not a tragedy, not a crime. Nobody died. And they don't want to hear that because they need this crime to be real so they can get mad at their scapegoat. But anyway, these people are clowns. So like I look at someone like Andrew Wilson, Candace Owens, these are bread and circus clowns because we're talking about government by bread and circuses, entertainment. And the people running around the stage are the clowns that keep you focused. But if you're following the clowns, what does that make you? If you're following a controlled op, what does that make you? Well, you're controlled op. You're a clown. You're a crisis actor. If you think Charlie Kirk's death was a tragedy and you're still weeping about it, you're a crisis actor. It's actually that simple. And I'm not a crisis actor. Nate says, true USA implies there was ever a point in time in history where the USA wasn't pre-scripted and predetermined. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I would, and there's a couple of movies I need to watch, actually. I want to review Megalopolis. It had some great points in there, because sometimes the meta-scripters drop real hints. Like, they really do. You can actually glean insight from their work, because they're gloating about the fact that they're taking part in the manufacturing of our history. But yeah, so I don't have any kind of attachment to some kind of ideal, like some glorious past. Like, oh, we got to bring back trad wives and take away the right to vote and reverse civil rights and close the borders. Like, we can make America great again. Like, that's all fiction. There's the reality TV show guy who sold you on this vision is part of the show. I'm sorry, the president. Excuse me. But anyway, we all know this here. But as the channel expands and as we encroach into Trutherville, as we are, we're going to be encountering more and more of these radicalized ignoramuses because they're super radical. They think they're defending something with their thumbs as they're sitting there tweeting, but they're 100% ignorant. And I've been encountering these people for the sole purposes of highlighting their ignorance because we know we are correct. We know that they are part of a controlled system, a paradigm in which they have a set of beliefs that makes them think that they're at war with the other side, and vice versa. It's triangulation. We have the diagrams to explain how this works. Go to infiniteplanesociety.com. Intro to Metascript is free. The Big Enchilada says, is it possible the clowns are the one running things? When you say the ones running things, I'm not really sure what you mean. We're looking at a global military operation. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. It's like a one world religion, and it's synchronized everybody into this singular paradigm. But there are these people who are just obsessed with, let me find out who did it. It's a who done it. And that's a red herring. Because one of the things is, the makers of this system knew when they made it. They like, oh, a certain segment of the population aren't going to believe it. So they manufactured a government-created counterculture, which I call Trutherville. All the conspiracy theories are government created. And I can say this confidently because conspiracy theories are subplots of the fake stuff, the pre-planned fake events that they perform for us on on the theater in the theater of Psywar. They perform these fake events. Well, every one of these has a subplot for the conspiracy theorists, for the ones who think they can see through it. So it satisfies them. It placates them. So if you're following a conspiracy theory, you've been placated and likely provocateur, radicalized. So these people want to come in here and they want to say, let's hunt down the bad guys. It's like, you're chasing a red herring. It's like not that obvious. And the truth of it is, we're looking at a what is it? Like, you're in no position to start chasing the bad guys if you don't even know what you're looking at. Because you're chasing a scapegoat who didn't do anything, for one. And if you don't know about Metascript, you don't have the situational awareness to think that you're, fighting the system anyway. And that's the nature of controlled op. They've been 100% nullified and conquered. So if you want to know who's running it, I would ask you, well, first, before you even get to that, tell me, what is it? If you can't tell me what it is, then you're still way behind. And we can name names unlike anybody else. These people who are hunting these bad guys, following these stories, like they're driving around in their mystery vans to unmask the bad guy. Candace Owens is driving. You got Ian Carroll in the back eating Scooby snacks. Like, no, you guys aren't solving crimes, conspiracy theorists. You didn't prove anything. You're being manipulated with formal and informal logical fallacies. You're being emotionally manipulated, goaded, and provocateured. It's actually kind of pathetic at this point. I mean, I think the blue pill normies are actually better off because they're not so engaged. They're not so invested emotionally. And the people who are super invested emotionally can't get out of it. Evidence doesn't work. Lloyd is he's a great case study because he's insisting that it's only a theory that Charlie Kirk's not dead and that it's probably Israel that killed him. And I'm like, wait a minute here. You're misusing the word theory for one. We're not promoting a conspiracy theory. It's not a theory that the news media uses simulations. This is not a theory. This is an observation. And if you're going to dismiss it without looking at the evidence, then we can dismiss your dismissal. If your skepticism doesn't involve analyzing facts, then it's simply incredulity. And I've been very skeptical about the skepticism of so many self-professed skeptics. Like, oh, I'm the world's greatest skeptic. But you never looked at the evidence. Like, if you're such a good skeptic, look at the evidence and discredit us, debunk us. Please. If you're someone who's so convinced that your personal incredulity is capable of deconstructing the concurrent programming, predictive programming, Metascript analysis, please have at it. Because a lot of us could find something else to do with our time. But if you're not doing that and you're just essentially repeating what you're told from mainstream or alternative, you're wasting your life. I'm not wasting my life here. I mean, this is a philosophical enterprise. It's educational. But we have a purpose here. And there's no purpose to just being a lemming NPC or alt NPC. And you might ask, what is the purpose? Well, it's like updating your operating system. Do you want to be triggerable, easy to manipulate? Do you want to run around full of misconceptions that polarize you, turn you against people? Do you want to be a puppet? Do you want to control do you want like just cede control? Like let someone else control your mind? Because the instant you become a skeptic about this stuff, you take away that power that they have to trigger you, control your mind, and emotionally manipulate you. I don't get triggered by any fake news events. None of it gets to me. And that's why it's funny when we talk to these people who are still plugged in, because they're super emotional. They're super triggered. They can't control their emotions. This is not an emotion-driven campaign. This is just an intellectual exercise. And the IPS think tank represents an intelligentsia, a core group who are operating on the premise that the world stage is a model, an internalized, hyper-real simulation Truman Show, and you can opt out of it. And when we're talking about who controls the Truman Show or who's it's not so simple as, oh, it's that ethnic group, which is the simplistic mind of the conspiracy theorists find that plausible. And they'll say, well, this group, because If you criticize them, you get censored. You know, you can criticize any group and get censored. I could spend the next few weeks just saying, you know, those Samoans. The Samoans have just infiltrated society. Samoans control everything. We got to stop the Samoans. And if I were to talk about that and maybe create memes of Samoans doing bad things, say, oh, the Samoans drink blood and sacrifice children to their gods, I would get banned off of YouTube for isolating an ethnic group, a race, or a tribe. Any special group, you just doesn't matter. They will ban you for it. And if that happened, would I then be correct in saying, well, I guess we know who controls us, because you know who controls you. It's the one you can't talk about. Like, no, that's completely fallacious. And that's the kind of reasoning that goes into these J-pill fools who think, well, you can't criticize them, so they are the ones. No, you can't criticize any group. And I only speak about J-pill so much because the red pill is a euphemism for that. It leads to that. And it's actually a subset of the far right part of the political horseshoe, which you could call the woke right, which makes sense because these people say, I'm awake. I've been awakened to the J question. You know, it's like the red pill. Oh, I'm awake. Alex Jones woke me up. And there's a lot of people who say this. They walk around saying, I'm awake, which is a way of saying you're asleep. It's false piety. It's like saying I'm holy and you're a sinner because I'm in the right, church or whatever. But no, you're not awake. You're having a nightmare. You're in a dream world. Unless you can delineate real from fake, not just every day looking at the news, because that's a no-brainer. It's Captain Obvious type behaviors to say, oh, that's fake, that's fake. No, deprogramming means that you recognize the cumulative effect of fake events over many, many decades and how that informs the worldview that the consensus exists within. The one that I've opted out of. The people who are still living in his story, in Big Brother's story, which I am decidedly not there. So we have to make sure that we take away not just the intellectual, but the moral high ground of the truthers. The truthers who think, I'm fighting the system, I'm waking people up, I am somehow a truth warrior. You're just like, no, that's crap. They're not actually doing anything other than perpetuating this whole thing. Because, and I have this in the diagram on info at the intro to Metascript. If you go to infiniteplanesociety.com, I show how the world stage is perfectly bifurcated, and every single fake event and fake character is brought into the scene in such a way that the left and the right will fight over it. And we see this bifurcation actually also on the right. They have their own internal split. The left is very unified. The left loves their fringe. If the fringe on the left burns down a city, the media, which is, aligned with left, they'll say, well, they are peaceful. That's a peaceful dumpster fire. It's a peaceful riot. Whereas the right is actually intrinsically split on their values between their factions, their mainstream, and their what you could call woke right. And it really just comes down to their relationship to their concept of the scapegoat. And so the right blames the left for things. They'll blame, for example, Tyler Robinson. That's the result of leftism. But the far right says, no, it's not the left. It's Israel. They did it. So that division is fundamental to understanding the right wing. It's pro and anti-Israel. And the anti-Israel part is the woke part. And every conspiracy theory fits within that subset. I was watching Hassan Pike, or listening to him for a minute there, and he was praising Candace Owens because he thinks Tyler Robinson did it. But he's glad that she has dropped a grenade in that whole conversation because he said, had she not done this, it would have been easy for the right to use the death of Charlie as a cudgel to take out the left. But he admitted that he doesn't care about the facts. He just cares about what's politically expedient. They Lie We See says, do your own research is do your own brainwashing. It does turn out to be that way because you're like, well, I'm going to be a truther. So here's your menu. You don't like the mainstream menu? Here's your alternative menu. So you go through it and okay, I'm going to do my own research. The menu, like I say, the red pill comes from the same pharmaceutical company that makes the blue pill. The menu of ideas, viewpoints that you get for the alt media comes from the same ones who authored the mainstream. It's effectively a duopoly. We are living under a worldview monopoly. It's the new monotheism. It's a one world religion. It's already here. So if you're worried about a one world religion coming in and taking over, you can relax. It's already happened. You've already been subsumed into it. All of your religions, all your churches, they're all subsets of this bigger story. You've been conquered. And it happened before you were born, so nothing to get mad about. JDM says, hoax me gently, hoax me slowly. Yeah, great song, great track that came from Gemma. And Gemma is going to be collaborating with me and maybe someone else. I'm not sure, but we're going to do a 9/11 hoaxiversary special. And it's worth talking about because there are still people who think that people died on 9/11. And I understand that if you're mainstream, you've never even thought outside of that box. But alt media has also been stuck on that notion that people died, even though they'll say, oh, it was done by direct energy weapons and tactical nukes and Israelis, not Islam. The right, mainstream right, will say Islam did it. The left thinks Islam did it, but they think we deserved it. Sort of like the left agrees Tyler did it, but Charlie deserved it. It's kind of, I mean, when you get down to it, the positions are predictable, 100%. Once you identify where somebody is on the political horseshoe, what factions they're in, all of their opinions are 100% predictable. They don't have deviations here. So now let's get into. Now I was gonna watch. I have to watch the new, not a new. It's an older movie. It's Tenet. Have any of you seen Christopher Nolan's Tenet? Tenet came out in 2020. A secret agent is given a single word as his weapon, and he's sent to prevent the onset of World War III. So I haven't watched it, but I'm going to have to watch it tonight. I think I did, but I don't know. For some reason, it didn't hold my I don't know. I'm looking at it now. Maybe I didn't watch it. I've seen some clips with the Opera House thing. Yeah, I would remember it. But anyway, central to the story is this thing. It's called the Sator Square, and it's a 5x5 square containing these palindromes. SATOR, which is rotas backwards. It has AREPO, which is like opera, and then tenet. So anyway, this is something that is a central part of the film. 25 letters that can be read horizontally, vertically, left to right. It's the oldest and most versatile palindrome in Western history. So I'm not 100% sure what this has to do with the movie because I haven't watched it. But I was staring at this today and I realized, oh, well, the movie did tie into an opera house psyop that happened. There was a shooting at an opera house that had been correlated with the show, with the movie. So here you're looking at that square right now. You see the word opera. Very interesting. Big Enchilada says Tenet was slop. See, I've heard that. But the thing to keep in mind here, I don't watch these movies for entertainment. I watch them for the programming. And programming, propaganda comes first. Entertainment is a side effect. Which means it's probably worth watching. Because I would say Megalopolis was Megaslopolis. Horrible movie. I mean, it was unwatchable. But I watched it because I'm doing opposition research and I had to. But I wouldn't recommend it to a friend. So I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, okay, now I have to go watch this movie and decode it because the Nolans are highly represented in the world of meta scripters. Both Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, both of them had fed quite a bit into the upcoming nuke and fallout scenario. Dark Knight Rising had connections with Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, as well as the Aurora shooting where Erica's best friend was fake killed. So I will be checking this one out. But weirdly enough, outside, I was taking some trash out, taking a walk, and I saw a box of tiles on the ground, and it happens to have Satori. It's some tile company. Anyway, it just stood out to me all of a sudden, which I'm taking this to be a sign that I probably should go watch the movie. We have some great memes coming up in our Discord server. Nuke the world stage. And that is the next agenda here. So the world stage construct is tantamount to a religion. And it's never criticized from within. The reason why they present every fake event in such a way is when the two sides fight, because they're triangulated against one another, the conspiracy theorists can do no right. Everything they say is wrong. The mainstream can do no wrong. Everything they say is the truth. That's the dynamic established by the central manipulator. So these two sides will fight over everything. And every time they fight over a fake event, the fake event becomes real. It's like, abracadabra, I speak as I create. They by talking about it, by engaging with it, it dominates the news cycle and it becomes de facto real. So I'm not reality compromised. I'm not confused. I know very well what's real and what's fake, but I know that the world stagers don't. And so we're living in a world of what I call a captive audience of brainwashees. So our next objective is, how do we shake up Trutherville to such a degree that a significant number of that particular captive audience break the spell and come to Realville? And that's what we are working on next. That's why we've invaded. The off-world stage position was a quarantine for the longest time. I mean, for like 18 months, almost 2 years or something, we were effectively quarantining ourselves because we didn't want to let those people in. Like the guy I just kicked out of here, if we let in these brainwashees, they're going to dilute the conversation. And we have to maintain a pure core before we can have it expand exponentially. You don't want to have it contaminated and then you blow it up and you have this faction that aren't on the same sheet as us. So if you're not on the same sheet as us, go somewhere else. And the reason why, it's not to be rude, but it's like, let's say you're truly a woke right warrior for truth or something. You're not going to get any progress here. Go take the fight to the world stage. You'd be wasting your time here because we are not participating in the mind war. I consider myself a conscientious objector. And if you are self-professed anti-war, but you're still on the world stage, you're actually not. You're not anti-war. You're immersed in the psychological warfare and you're taking part in it every time you play ball with any one of these events or any of these positions, or if you even if you vote. I mean, voting here now, this is a big reveal. These staged events, the simulations that comprise our history, that actually distort the real version of things and become our agreed upon consensus history, these events are planned many years in advance. Sometimes 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. On a case-to-case basis, as we look at these things, it's a pretty established pattern here. We're looking at many years in the making. So that said, let's just take, for example, the earliest example of predictive programming for Donald Trump is 1958, a TV show called Trackdown, about a con man, Trump, wants to build a wall, protect people from a cosmic threat like Space Force. He gets arrested. That was 58 years before he was elected. So now, that would give you an indication that Donald Trump was inevitable. And it's not just Trump. It's every world stage character with any significance that has this same pattern. So we were conditioned. The reason why you have people who are so Trump deranged that he's all they think about is because they've been fed a steady barrage of propaganda to hate Trump for a long time. Back to the Future. Biff Tannen, the bad guy. Yeah, that's a guy modeled off of Donald Trump. And why would they do that? Why does that make sense? Like, how did it make sense to make a movie and include this random real estate magnate? Like, what makes Donald Trump so significant and important that he's basically baked into the culture, baked into our collective psyche. It's because he was inevitable, which means, did voting make a difference? I would say no. I would say it was preordained. He was going to win and then lose and then win. Nothing about this is random. None of it is up to us. Like, oh yeah, we control it down here. We the voters, we got the power, we control it. No, we don't. If you're living in history, you're just a background character. You're an extra. You're an unpaid crisis actor, and that's it. Voting is just essentially, it amounts to a steam valve. And I see why they do it, because the illusion of control is a great pacifier. And it's an illusion. And if you're still participating in that illusion, if you're still a voter, then you're living in history, which means you are more or less participating in the mass deception. You're self-deceived. And a lot of people will hold that position because tradition, habit, nostalgia or something, or they have some sense of loyalty. And that's what I've been saying here is like, do I have any loyalty to this country? Do I have any loyalty to like America? Well, I don't even know what that means. As far as I'm concerned, we have a one world order. This is one world, one worldview, a worldview monopoly, which again, I consider to be a new monotheism. So the everything else is just nominal, just decoration. So no, I'm not participating. I'm a, when I say off-world stager, that's pretty much what I mean. It's kind of like the overview effect. You know, the astronauts say that when they go to space and they look down at the Earth, they no longer see borders. They just see humanity as one. And they see us wrecking the world. But they have God's eye view from out there. And they consider this is like a faux transcendence. Like, oh, we transcended all that worldliness. Now, we here know it's a farce that nobody goes to space. But that's what we're told. What I'm saying is that unlike the overview effect, the auto hoax perspective, the off-world stage perspective quite literally gives you an overview effect. Because when you look at it from this perspective, when you look at the hijacking of time, of worldview, then you're kind of apprised of the insignificance of voting, the meaningless, the futility of it. So no, I'm not in any way politicized, nor do I feel in any way it's my job to save America. Like the MAGAs have been running around for years, must save America from the left. It's like, I don't know, does America even exist in any meaningful way? You know, we're talking about simulated events, politicians that adhere to it, a scripted reality, and the time controllers tell us that this is 2026, but I don't know. I find everything to be very much questionable at this point. And the significance of what we're talking about, the meta script, is that events planned that far in advance on a global scale means that we are living in some collective delusion. A mass agreed upon collective delusion, which are the exact words spoken by Julia Roberts' character in Michelle Obama's movie, Leave the World Behind, where there's a blackout, they're in a bunker, everything's falling apart. And the character that corresponds to Obama is talking about the internet going down, and she's like, well, it's just a mass agreed upon collective delusion. It's very actually nihilistic. They Lie We See says, does Lloyd still vote? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's a voter. You can see his terminology is very woke, right coded, J-pill code. And people are stuck in their ways. This is a radical new theory to them, or a radical new perspective. But it's not a theory. And the thing is, too, they have conjecture, they have theories, they have feelings, they have propaganda designed to agitate them. And do you know what we have? We have empirical research, we have observational data, and we have a model that has predictive capability. I mean, this is not a new thing for us here, but we are consistently applying it. Like I said, I saw Christopher Nolan was releasing a movie, The Odyssey, a year ago, and I said it's going to be about the nuke, which would make sense to a normie or a truther. They're like, what do you mean? It's about a guy in a boat. Going back to find his wife and stuff. No, I knew based on Nolan and the code, the symbolism, Poseidon, everything at that time that the movie was announced, that this is going to be a continuation of Oppenheimer in a more abstract way. And that is exactly the case. As the director and Matt Damon said, that Odysseus equals Oppenheimer, Trojan Horse equals Nuke. The whole movie was just a sequel, what they called a spiritual sequel to Oppenheimer. So how did I know that? A year before it came out. How did I know that before the critics figured that out? How did I know that the trailers leading up to the movie would reference the subtext? Whether it was the Navy nuclear engineer commercial, whale fall about some big leviathan and a scuba diver living in its belly, like another reference, I think it was in that Tom Cruise movie that's coming out about nuclear waste. But anyway, the trailers consistently, because they condense in the trailer the main meta-scripted message. Whatever propaganda that the movie's going to contain will likely be put in the trailers. In case you don't get a chance to watch the movie, you still get hit with the right memes. And this has been a consistent observation since I've been going to the theaters to observe this. And I said, I don't go for the streaming on my computer. I like to go to the theater because I want to see what is in the trailers, because I have consistently noted that the trailers contain relevant programming to what's going to be in the feature. Now, if you're not familiar with the term hyper reality, I brought this up in our Discord server earlier, but it's essentially what I've been saying here. It's the idea that your real world has been augmented with a bunch of simulation, and everyone treats the simulation as though it's real. I've also been talking about alternate reality games. Like you could say, because look, Candace Owens knows she's an actress. Andrew Wilson, the guy that debated her, yeah, he knows he's an operative. He knows. I don't know how much in the know they are about the big picture, but they know they are participating in a farce, in a ruse, in a manipulative propaganda campaign, but they don't talk about it. It's like in wrestling. You have these two characters, you cheer for either one. They both know it's staged. The audience pretends not to know. In this case, Andrew and Candace know it's staged. They know how it's supposed to go. But their audience don't know. But in these alt-reality games or in these theatrical performances, they never draw attention to the fact that it's fake. And those of us who call out the stuff that is provably fake are ignored. So here's a tweet that I put out there. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment for all the people following Conspiracy Candy's psyop slop. The mainstream right thinks she's a grifter. The woke right thinks she's a hero. Both sides fail to understand that she is a crisis actress working for big psyop. Conspiracy theories are psyops. Psychological operations, which, I mean, I like that word, psyop, mind war, but we have to be wary of using terms that the other side misuses. Like the word fake has lost all meaning. Even the word staged. Staged does not contain the implication the event was fake anymore. They're consistently appropriating our lingo, our terminology, so they can direct it back into their closed system. So I don't use the word hoax. The reason I don't use the word hoax is hoax makes it seem like this group tricked the media and played everybody for a fool. No, the media are the hoaxers. They're part of the psyop entertainment complex. Simpletons will say, you can't say everybody in media is doing it. And I would say to that, yeah, we're certainly not. It's a faction, a security clearance thing, a segment. Nobody here speaks in terms of all, like, oh, everything's fake or all events are scripted. Anybody who uses that argument against you is being disingenuous, and you have to call them out on it. I've been hit with that for several years now. Oh, you just say everything's fake. No. You guys operate on the premise that everything's real. I say a small percentage of events are fake. I would describe the media as a liar, but not a bad liar, because bad liars lie all the time. People find out, nobody trusts them. Good liars lie to those who trust them, and they do so strategically. Media is a good liar. So Blair White here says, she's another person on Twitter, an InfoWars type. She says, low IQ conspiracy theories are a threat to high IQ conspiracy theories. And my response to this really is that there are no high IQ conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories are things that people take upon faith. These are beliefs. These are things that don't require any actual thinking. There's no cognitive processing. It's just, I believe this person. I'm drinking this person's Kool-Aid. There's no evidence, but there's a constant drum of propaganda. And they will go with the alternate for everything. There's no vetting. But my response was, all the conspiracy theories are subplots of the mainstream fake events. The high IQ position here is to refuse the mainstream and the conspiracy. But you're not going to find that position unless you go to Realville. Unless you come to where we are, that perspective is not going to be recognized as valid. It's not going to be validated, honored, researched, or observed. The most you'll get is hand-waving dismissals, if not some kind of ad hominem. Like I've been told, well, it's been said about me that my premise that the news lies and prevents simulated events, my premise that that is the case and that you can see evidence of it and collusion with entertainment. There are self-avowed skeptics who say that I'm crazy for saying so. Does anybody here in chat think that I have lost my mind? That I'm just crazy? And even if, and this is another point, because maybe I am crazy. Like maybe I am significantly unhinged. Let's just go with that. Yeah, I am crazy. It doesn't change the facts. I'm crazy. The sky's blue. Is the sky still blue even though I'm crazy and I have said so? Yeah. So that's the nature of ad hominem, meaning it's wrong because he's crazy. No, it can be both. It could be I'm right and I'm crazy, or I'm wrong because I'm crazy. My craziness has nothing to do with it. So ad hominem isn't simply calling names. It's attempting to discredit an argument based on the person who's speaking it, which is a fallacy. It's a lazy fallacy that self-avowed skeptics should be above using, but some of them aren't. And maybe nobody told them, but at this point, like I said earlier today or yesterday, we've decided that to be a skeptic, to be able to claim that, you have to be able to analyze the facts and discredit or debunk based on those. Otherwise, you're not truly a skeptic. I've revoked the skeptic cards of a number of people. So here's a case in point. Here's and I think these people are boring and dull, and I don't like hyper focusing on any aspect of this thing. It gets dull and boring. However, we have a point here. We're not going along with the alt media spin. We're not mourning a martyr who is going to be president. No, actually what we're doing here is we are putting an end to the legitimacy of these things by hyper analyzing it. That's where our criticism is going. So here's Charlie Kirk, and we've been looking at pictures of him. There's a thickness. There's a thickness around his mouth. There's a thickness to his head. Like, I'm like really close to just saying that not only was this guy a lifelong crisis actor, but that the entire public persona of Charlie Kirk is not just manufactured by itself, but also his face. His face, his head. He might actually be wearing one of those hyper-realistic CIA masks like Jonah Mendez described. And you would not be able to, you couldn't falsify that claim. The tech is that good. But I'm thinking here, he may have been wearing something like that for some time. And it wouldn't have to be too far off from his real face. It wouldn't have to be necessarily. He may not look all that different beneath it, but there's something rubbery about that guy. And it would explain quite a lot about the bulging neck and the swelling of the skin as the squib deployed. It wasn't an exploding microphone. The exploding microphone wouldn't explain the back of his neck bulging out. You know, like a frog's neck, like frogs, their necks will like balloon. The back of his neck ballooned. How did that happen? Was it the bullet and it was going against his neck skin, stretched it out? Was it the force from the shot? No, it was a squib. 100% a squib. A couple of things here though, because there are so many examples of predictive and concurrent programming that people want to dismiss as mere coincidence. But not only was Charlie Kirk introduced to all the people who would cheer his death through South Park like a month before it happened, and here he is laughing about it, but in that episode, he was knocked off of his chair and he fell to the left. And I think it's also kind of interesting how it seemed to coincide perfect with his America Comeback Tour. Like, do the South Park writers know that he was going to take a tour? And I kind of dispute, as many people do, whether he was as popular as everyone claims to say. Like, I personally don't know anybody who knew anything about him before that day. I knew about him just because I followed this stuff. But I never saw him as this superstar they portray him to be. Like, they've retconned his history. I think what's more likely the case is that they needed to introduce his audience to him. South Park targets mostly, I think, left at this point. So they wanted to make sure they would hate him properly. Like, you know, Orwell's 2 Minutes of Hate. And so here you have a character introduced and taken out exactly like you saw him. And by the way, people are still looking at the event. They just don't get it right. But they do find interesting observations. Like the one who was asking him the question before the shooting was rehearsing his shock. He was making hand gestures like he was shooting Charlie. Like that stuff kind of reveals that it was a big clown show. But some of the things that conspiracy theorists find were meant for them to find. You were meant to look at Squib Team 6. We were supposed to say, hey, wait a minute here. The guys around Charlie are acting super suspicious at the last minute, and this guy appears to be shooting some kind of exotic weapon. Yeah, those guys were choreographed to do that. That's how they got the conspiracy theories started. They gave Candace Owens content for days, for months. She's made a career out of it. And it's not her. She's not a grifter who made a career out of it. She's an actress playing that role. Like Erica Kirk is an actress. And she's not an actress playing a grieving widow. She's an actress playing a Mossad, deep state honeypot who betrayed Charlie and had that intention when they met, who's acting like she's a grieving widow. So there's a layer to this that truthers don't get. They have a very shallow take. They take all the truther bait and they don't go any deeper. But another thing here is this. Again, what are the chances that a month before he's going to be blasted on TV on South Park, like a month before he shot, he's familiarized with the audience for that event. So that alone is a notable coincidence. And when the event happened, I said, it looks real, but if it's fake, we're going to find a bunch of programming stuff. So that's just one example. But then the fact that he gets knocked out of his chair to the left, that's another coincidence. And these things pile up rapidly to the point where if you're in the coincidence theory crowd, you have a lot to deal with. And they don't. They ignore it. But that's only because it's safe right now to hide behind the ignorance of the consensus. It's 2026. It's embarrassing if you're still doing that. But yeah, you can take refuge in the collective. You can say, hey, you guys who are thinking outside of the box, you guys are crazy. And people will agree with you. So you can go hide behind the NPCs, which is cowardly and craven, and it's not going to age well as a behavior because we have enough information here to move past that. So anybody who's not on our side by now, is beginning to look very sus, in my view. I mean, it's one of two things, either ignorant or nefarious. It's one of the two. And would you follow somebody who's foolish and deceived, or somebody who's an agent, purposefully deceiving you? Hopefully you would say none, neither. But that's your option. You can say, well, this person doesn't know, so they're ignorant, or they know and they're not saying. Nick Fuentes says the Trump government could have used Charlie Kirk's assassination to annihilate Antifa, the far left. But now the leftist garbage that openly celebrated the murder are benefiting since Kirk was eliminated and the right wing devoured itself. Same thing Hassan Piker said. Again, it's all by design. I'm going through my tweets. If you want to follow me there, it's at Real Tim Osman. Let me go through some more comments. A sudden case of red pilling says, I always thought Charlie looked weird as hell. I agree he's wearing a mask. Yeah. Look, I've been looking at images of like him sitting next to other people, and his head is significantly bigger. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily abnormal about a watermelon noggin on a guy who's 6'4". Like, yeah, it's probably proportional, but there are times I look at it, it's like, no, there's like another layer there, like unnecessary thickness. And even the hair. So these masks that we talk about aren't really masks. That's kind of a misnomer. It's an entire face, head, ears, hair, chest, goes all the way down. They have full bodysuits. Now, if you're going to do a JFK scale psyop, an assassination, a generational psyop, and you have their budget and all the tools that they have, all the tricks of the trade, that would be very consistent. That is something they would do. And now, the squib itself, and you'll never hear Candace Owens say squib. She'll talk about exploding microphones and Chinese space lasers and all kinds of wacky things before she'll talk about a very well-known technique for simulating a gushing bloody wound that has been used in the movie industry for many decades. But the question is, well, where do they hide the blood pack? Where do they hide the tube? So there would be a tube at his neck. And then, of course, there would be a sack of blood. And there's some device there that will basically cause an explosion and forcefully eject that blood out of the tube. Well, how do you conceal such a thing? Well, you just wear a synthetic hood, a mask. And that's what it looks like. And if you look at the blood gushing out, it doesn't look like a bullet hole. It does look like some kind of it looks almost like a slit or something. But anyway, the way it ejects is very consistent with the Hollywood squib. The techniques for faking stuff needs to be studied, and I didn't know what squibs were before. I guess it was the Christchurch event where I became educated about squibs. I mean, I knew about it. Like, I knew about squibs from like The Matrix, where they got the bullets blowing up and you got holes in the walls. So squibs are explosives. But I hadn't really thought about the use of squibs in psyops, and they generally would not need them because we don't get to see the live killings in any of the cases. But if you look at mass casualty simulations, these things are in use regularly. So you have these mass casualty simulations for EMTs, and the casualty actors will wear prosthetic arms or things they slide over their arm so they can bleed. I mean, it's all there. And as a rule, if they can fake it in the movies, they can fake it on the news. And we're dead on with this one. And their best explanation to explain it away is either exploding Mike, or they will agree with us. So Jesse on Fire, who's definitely a Fed, was on InfoWars talking about this. And they said, no, we think it's a squib. And Alex Jones said, yeah, all of his military buddies told him it's a squib. It's fake. But instead of saying, well, Charlie's fake, Eric is fake, news is fake. They say, yeah, he had to do it because Israel was going to kill him. So he had to go into cover. So he's in witness protection. That's the best explanation they have to explain away the fact that it looks very squibby. But that's not a good answer. Because if you were going to go into witness protection, would you actually do a performance piece like that in front of an audience of 3,000 that could go wrong in a million ways, which would necessarily involve collusion with dozens of people, including all of your close friends? So now everybody knows you're in witness protection. That's not very secure. But that's the best they could do as far as damage control goes. But yes, I think Charlie Kirk was a deep fake. Like, I mean, I'll say he was certainly a deep fake. The question of whether or not he was wearing a mask is not all that important, but I think it's highly likely. If he was or wasn't, doesn't make a difference. Either way, he was a deep fake. He was a construct. The Big Enchilada says, looks like a thwomp from Super Mario. I'm curious as to what a thwomp looks like now. I'll see if I can find one here. Sounds familiar. Speaking of Super Mario Bros. Galaxy was out, Plumbers in Space, at the exact same time that the astronauts on the Artemis mission were having plumbing issues. Is that a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the previous Super Mario Brothers movie had a character based on Donald Trump, King Koopa? Like, again, why is Trump such a fixture in entertainment? Why did they base King Koopa on Donald Trump? So, like, they villainized him in advance. They created the Donald Trump villain far in advance, before he was ever introduced to us in that way. Okay, I see it. I see the thwomp face. I agree there. And by the way, Dennis Hopper, speaking of birthdays, Dennis Hopper died on JFK's birthday, 5/29. Dennis Hopper plays King Koopa based on Trump, according to the director and writer. In that movie, the Twin Towers get vaporized. And that's a recurring theme. You'll find that the predictive programming characters that relate to Trump are associated with a number of things, like 9/11. It's a consistent one. Biff Tannen, 9/11. It's actually kind of consistent to where you can kind of track these staged characters, these historic personages they manufacture. You can track their fictional counterparts over the years. And it tells a parallel story. The story of Butler, Pennsylvania, surviving an assassination attempt, yeah, that's been presented to us for some time. And not only that, but that he would deserve it, that the public would want it to happen. The Homelander is the crescendo of that character, where he actually dies. And that's been a recent, plot twist. Okay, here. Again, we're going through my Twitter feed. I try to mark anything that I think is significant, worth talking about. And I'm generating more infographics. This is a more recent conceptual model. The world staged is a closed narrative system. And so you can kind of see it's split in two. It's built around endless pro versus anti-conflict. You have the approved alternative, and then you have the mainstream. Our perspective, outside of their rigged frame, is the off-world stage perspective. Media deconstruction, auto-hoaxing, examines the architecture, not just each story. So this kind of graphic explains or describes the invisible cage that we've been put within. And the only way out is off-world stage. If you're not off-world stage, it means you're clinging to some narrative guardrail. You're clinging to some consensus that again, I think it's very questionable for someone to be defending the manufactured fake consensus worldview at this stage. I find it to be very questionable. I'm not saying you're an agent if you're doing so, but I will say that you are a de facto agent. What you would call a useful stooge. Okay, continuing here. Flozik, thanks for joining. Dean James. In a crazy world, normal is crazy. Yeah, exactly. I came across that concept. I was reading Sane Society by Eric Fromm, and he asks the question, if society is fundamentally sick, what does it mean to be, healthy? It's like if you're not going along with it, it is kind of ironic because you are going to be outgrouped as the one who's actually in error. Like everybody in a cult, if you're in a cult, doesn't matter what it is, most cults, they have this built-in assumption that anybody not outside of it is somehow flawed. Dean James says he reminds me of Beavis. Ted Stryker says, see, Kirk was weird looking. How did that garbage pail kid get Erica? More proof at stage. So I've come across that one. Because I thought so too. But he had $1 billion backer. So there's that. That might have influenced her. So it makes her look like she's just out there for power. It also suggests that he was naive and overwhelmed. Because, he comes out there looking like a G-Pail kid, and then he gets Miss Arizona. So it actually sets the stage for the people who believe that, oh, he was just a good Christian, virgin, pure as the wind-driven snow, and then this Jezebel came and took over. So it lends credence to that particular narrative, the femme fatale, which is what you see in Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes, it even has a hint on the movie cover. It's like, don't believe anything you see or whatever, where the blonde conspiracy associated character, the femme fatale, is so close to Charlie Kirkland when he gets shot on the exact same side of his neck that she gets blood on her dress. Again, that's the actress who shows up in Heads of State later, which came out at the same time as the assassination. All right, continuing here. What's up, BTC pleb? He says, God is in the computer code. Holy C equals Holy C++. Yeah, I kind of like that idea. I like the analogy. I think that it's probably accurate. Like when I spell, I think of the word sorcery, and I think of it as like source code. Manipulating reality at the precausal source level before it comes into being. Like in the Matrix, when Neo cracks the Matrix, you see the code, the source code. Michael Lita says, Tim, Charlie's frog neck and watermelon noggin doesn't look like anything to me. Right. Doesn't look like anything to me. Like a good synth. Michael Lita says, I'd love to see Tim do the news on SNL. Oh yeah. That would be a good format, to be honest. I've always liked the out of anything on SNL, I would watch it for the music, but it's always the news and the deadpan delivery it just always killed me. But there's just so much out there, so much fodder. You would never run out of material. Critterfist says, Tim, you called me out last night when I told you my father was a worshipful master on the checkerboard floor. The old guys did and laughed about it at the lodge. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about that. You were saying that your father put black and white tiles in your floor in your house. I mean, I don't have any reason not to say that's. But are you saying that they used your house for like lodge rituals or something? What is the. And so the significance, though, the tile floors, in my view, has to do with the control over the world stage through dialectics, like you see on this diagram here, the left and the right, black and white. It's all just this, and it has multiple interpretations. But the interpretation that the mainstream Masons get is probably not the right one. And I don't think Masons run the world, although you can find their symbolism all over the fake events, the craft, that's what they call it. And if you look at what they're actually about, it's theater, it's stagecraft. They're reenacting plays, and their structure is like the old stonemasons guilds. But I think the takeaway here, and so this is an interesting one too, Tyler Robinson. The Tyler in the lodge is the guy at the door with a weapon, guarding it against people coming in. But the main takeaway I have from it is that it represents a secret club that brings people in wearing a wool sack over their heads. So you heard the expression, pull the wool over your eyes, hoodwinked. That's where it comes from, that you're considered to have the wool pulled over your eyes until you are brought in, and they take the hood off you and they initiate you. So the initiation is simply showing you the light by removing the hood. So what is the hood? It's the darkness they put the masses into. So you could say that the off-world stage perspective is the perspective you have when you have been de-hoodwinked. And the hoodwink of the day is the black mirror. It's the screen. It's the perspective you get from being immersed in the media ecosystems. And the controllers, the initiates in this system, know it's fake. The programmers are let in to some degree. I don't think that there's a unanimous or there's like a unilateral awakening to everything. I think that the programmers are mostly programmed. I don't think it's like the military. Like, I don't think it makes sense to let a lot of people in on how big the secret is. So I think it's like need to know basis. But the main point here is that in their very ceremony, in their rituals, they make it very clear that the people out there are considered to be in the darkness. And you're only let in on the light if you swear not to tell. And if you do tell, you have an NDA, or the non-disclosure agreement, or a blood oath. And if you violate the blood oath, they have what are called the penal codes, which means if you try to tell the normies that they're living in darkness and you try to share the light, and this is a common theme with the control system, like Prometheus, he steals the light from Olympus and he gives it to man. What do? They tie him to a rock and they let the vultures eat his guts. And that's for 7 years. So Prometheus, he suffered for you to have civilization, according to this myth, for 7 years. But in the penal codes, if you tell the truth or you spill this information, you agree that, yeah, they can cut your throat or cut your belly and rip your guts out or rip your heart out. So you'll see certain signs like the hand across the neck or the fist to the chest. Yeah, these are all references to the oaths that they take. And if you've ever been to court and you've sworn on a Bible, that's the essential format of the Masonic swearing oath, the swearing in ceremony. So I think it's an interesting, archaic relic from the past, but it's like, well, they caught Tyler 33 hours after. Like they throw out their symbolism all the time. So you can kind of see it's part of the culture. The culture of the programmers is distinctly Masonic. It's not only that, but that's a big part of it. Critter says, they installed it in their houses. I don't know. Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that could be. I think the black and white tile thing, putting it in your home, if you're a Freemason, yeah, I guess so. I have another theory about it as well, because they say that they are all on the level. So, like, doesn't matter if you're first degree, third degree, 33rd degree. There's no ranking system. They're all considered to be on the same level when they're on the temple floor. And I look at it as, okay, the masses are caught up in the dialectics. they're caught up in the mind war, the triangulation. They're in the left, right, black, white. So if you're on the level, you're standing above, on top of that lower tier of society. So I kind of think the tiles represent that they are walking on a tier above the world stage. Not that you're told this stuff, but I think it's implied. I think that I mean, for the most part, like my point about how the programmers aren't fully let in on the system, yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, Albert Pike, who wrote the degrees from 4 to 30, 32, he wrote these degrees, but he, in his own writings, has said that the lower rank, or that the newbies, the Blue Lodge, that they're purposefully misled about the meanings of the symbols. And I think this is the case because I was friends with a Freemason who was a Rosicrucian, and I went through a lot of the literature, and I was kind of surprised to find that some of the stuff was pretty much about magic, hermetic magic. And I don't have this stuff anymore, unfortunately. But one of the booklets I received from this collection that was given to me was from a Rosicrucian group that met every 6 months. And this individual I'm speaking of was in the normal Masonic lodge, but then he also belonged to these other groups. And the one that I'm talking about here, it was describing how the Blue Lodge rituals have some kind of hermetic magical principles. So in other words, it's a magical ceremony, group magic, which is not the same thing that the Blue Lodge members think that it is. They think, oh, we're just hanging out. It's a stonemasons club. It's like Boy Scouts for grown-ups, and we're having steak on Wednesday nights, getting away from the wives. Like, to them, the way it's presented, yeah, this is just archaic nonsense, cool symbols, but ultimately nothing really nefarious behind it. But no, I've read literature that has me thinking it's quite different. And you don't have to know that you're participating in group ceremony or magic ritual in order to be a matrix battery, in order to feed into the thing. Like, your consent isn't necessarily required. Nate says the lost art of keeping a secret. No, I would say they're pretty good at it. These days it's NDAs, compartmentalization, but we're talking about a system that has created a captive, mind controlled audience out of billions. I would say it's pretty well done. I call it a security clearance society more than a secret society that runs this place. And the penal codes are pretty brutal. I could understand why somebody wouldn't want to run afoul of the group and risk having their intestines ripped out, burned, and the ashes scattered to the four winds. Like, they're very creative in what they say they will do to you. By the way, the reality impairment is not getting any better. This is a post with 1 million views. And to me, I process this as AI slop. What you have here is a robot laying bricks, a humanoid robot. Speaking of masonry, it's like a robot mason. A humanoid robot lays an entire paver patio overnight. No sore backs, no smoke breaks. Every stone laser straight. The paving was supposed to be too physical to automate. Turns out it's not a problem. The guy who quoted $6,000 for the job still charges that, and he doesn't have to split with the crews. Who loses here? The workers or the customer who never notices the difference? So here you have an AI generated robot laying bricks. Now, obviously it's AI slop. Well, it's obvious to me, although we won't be able to tell in the near future. But I'm going through the comments, and every other comment here, I'd say no, actually 100% of them are saying it's fake, it's real, with few exceptions. Another thing too, Grok is becoming increasingly confused about what is real and what is fake. Grok will just agree, I can't tell. So this visual illiteracy is another thing to contend with here. And I would equate visual literacy to just regular illiteracy because it renders us incapable of discerning real from fake without deferring to the authority to tell us which is which. Dean James says, don't throw pearls to swines. Yeah, well, the thing is, you don't have to hide things. That's the one of the things about this is that these secrets can be kept even if they're in plain sight. Because if you don't have the initiated interpretation, you're just not going to be able to see it. You'll see what everyone else sees, but you'll have a different interpretation. So to be initiated, it doesn't mean like you have some kind of special insight. It means you have insider knowledge. And if you have the insider knowledge, then your interpretation will be slightly different or very different. For example, I didn't know what the Truman Show was about when I went to go see it. But at the time, I was reading the work of Robert Anton Wilson, a book called The Cosmic Trigger, that happened to be about the dog star and his theory that Sirius the dog star was somehow connected with the next stage in the evolution of human consciousness, and that by aligning with it, you would see through the illusion of the material world. Well, the Truman Show begins really when the dog star falls from the sky. It's a satellite, it's a stage light that corresponds to Canis Majoris. And Truman looks at this dog star stage light, Canis Majoris. Now, he doesn't say it, he doesn't read it out loud. It's just like a single frame, and it's not really intrinsic to the story. But when I watched it, I said, wait a minute. This puts the story of a guy getting out of a staged reality on a big movie stage, it puts it into a deeper esoteric context. Like now it's allegory. But that wasn't the takeaway version for most ticket holders. And that's when I realized there's an esoteric nature. And at first I thought, this is just an Easter egg. This is something that is going to be talked about. And the more I look into it, no, this was actually a hint for, people to discern and have. A lot of people know about it now, but if you weren't already initiated or made aware of, I should say, the significance of the dog star, that would not have meant anything. So because I was briefed, because I had that knowledge about that particular facet, the movie had a completely different interpretation for me. Etheric Bliss says, the robot narrative is a soft power struggle and propaganda sling with China. They've been really pushing it over the last year or so. Well, I'm just not really sure, but it just seems like underwhelming to me. Like the robots aren't taking over. It's a bunch of CGI slop, AI slop. Okay, speaking of real and fake, do you remember Raja Jackson and Psycho Stu? This was last year. And just like there was a lot of people who thought this was real. I went on Sean Strickland's Twitter account and I said this was fake. And I had so many threats from people. Like threats from Sean Strickland. He's an MMA guy. His people were messaging me and they were saying, well, I can go to your house and punch you in the face 23 times for real. And then we'll see if you call it fake. So wrestling fans get mad when you tell them it's fake. But in this case, Raja Jackson the story is he's beating an unconscious Psycho Stu. And they have to pull him off. And it was reported that he punched him 23 times in the face while he was unconscious. In fact, Jake the Awake says this is real. He swears on this thing. He says, no, this is real. And I'm crazy for calling it fake. And I'm like, no, this is not real. And I stand by that. So it's a year later and I'm looking at it. And I'm going to say it now. If you think this is real, you've been kayfabed. You've been fooled. He doesn't. Now, this is my first clue here. It was reported everywhere he was punched in the face 22 times, 23 times. I slowed it down and counted. You could only argue that he was hit 11 times. That's the maximum. But then if you get into the quality of every hit, it raises another question. And I would say, well, look, in my video I showed this. I'll make another video on it. He is not really contacting the guy's face. You can see his hand opens up and it's over the face. So a lot of people are saying, oh, the reason why he didn't hit 23 times is because he was in such a rage. I'm sorry, but if you're an MMA fighter, you got someone pinned and they're unconscious, you're not going to miss any punches. Could you imagine punching something a foot away and missing? So that's absurd. But here's how the illusion worked. Psycho Stu was body slammed. And again, this is standard WWE choreographed consensual body slamming. And in the history of body slammings in wrestling entertainment, no one's ever been knocked unconscious from that. If you're body slammed on that canvas, you're not going to get knocked out. It is not going to happen. But for some reason, Psycho Stu was knocked out cold. I looked into it. I couldn't find any good examples, except for WWE, where you do have people getting knocked out from body slamming, but these are in WWE. And they wake up at a very, it's like timed very precisely. It's choreographed. So now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that I'm just pointing out how people are so easy to fool. But I slowed it down, and here's what I arrived at. I reject the premise that he's unconscious. So the reason why these punches look real is that he's turning his head rapidly left and right to correspond to the punches. If anything, Raja Jackson is just fluffing the beard. Fluffing the beard. It looks dramatic. So you can subtract at least 15 from the total you're given, but look how unusual these punches are. His hand goes down, and then instead of contacting the face, he lowers his elbow, and now the fist is driving up. And anyway, I went through this punch by punch. It's totally fake. It's still fake. It was fake last year. It's fake now. So I'm hoping that maybe Jake the Awake can take a second look at this and either double down on Raja Jackson punching an unconscious guy 23 times, or at least lower the number. But I still can't find a single punch. And by the accounts we were given, there were teeth flying out. There was blood everywhere. I'm sorry, I don't see any of that. I don't even know if Psycho Stu had any teeth to begin with. But anyway, story from last year, Sean Strickland picked it up, and it was thrown into the succession of race war psyops that started with the Carmelo Anthony stabbing scenario, and then Shiloh Hendricks, the racist on the playground. This was just another thing that was thrown into it, where the racists were saying that, no, he lost control because of his race, and he was so enraged. It got to be pretty ugly. And I was like, okay, this has got to be some kind of agitprop. But I'm standing by my initial claim. It's fake. And if I need to, I will release a second video and do a punch-by-punch analysis of the fake beating of a guy who's pretending to be unconscious. Etheric Bliss says, how does his head spring back to center if he's out? Yeah, exactly. So if he was knocked out, his head would have slumped to one side. But no, the guy was moving his head under his own volition. But it gives the illusion that he was being knocked back and forth. I mean, it's a compelling illusion. But I mean, this is wrestling. That's their job. They've been doing this for I mean, I mean, how far back does fake wrestling go? I mean, the techniques of theatrical punching have been perfected. But what I find interesting about it is this: everybody watching it knows it's all fake because it's wrestling. But then this one event happens, and they're like, oh no, but that was real. Why do you say so? Because you were told it's real on TMZ? And if it was real, why did they over-report the number of punches to the face? Diana Southard, I can't read that comment 100%, but I agree. Etheric says it's fake. Hey, look, if you follow Jake the Awake, because he gave me flack over this. If you follow Jake the Awake, ask him if he still thinks Psycho Stu got knocked out from a consensual body slam and got punched while he was unconscious 23 times. And then if you look into the puncher, Raja Jackson's father is known for having punched an unconscious guy a bunch of times. But that was real in an MMA fight. And what he did was, yeah, he continued to punch, and that wasn't so fakeable. It was pretty obvious they were contacting, the blows were contacting. This is completely different. But it was kind of a repeat of his father. His father had a similar incident. Oh, Sam says everyone's a mark. Exactly. It's all choreographed. Jai Christopher says, is this live? No, this is pretty much a bizarre coincidence. Your comment. Because this is pre-recorded. UFC looks real, says Jai. Yeah, look, okay, now that raises the question of fakeability. Like, yeah, some things are just not fakeable. And WWE is built on kayfabe and fakery. I don't know if you can make the same claim about UFC. You could possibly say games are rigged, maybe, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go on it. I haven't seen anything convincing that those fights are fake. But rigging is a different story. It's a different category of fake. Okay, let's move on. I just wanted to bring that up because I'm hoping to get some back and forth with the awake one. I would like for the awakened one to reassess his perspective on Psycho Stu and Raja Jackson's little spat, their choreography, their performance art piece. Because I didn't find it compelling or convincing. But people get so hyper emotional. Like I said, Sean Strickland's army wanted to come to my house and beat me to a pulp. Like, beat me for real. Because I didn't believe in that. That's like a religion. Like, oh, you don't believe in my religion? Well, then I'm going to kill you. We're going to throw rocks at you. We're going to wage war on you because you don't believe what we believe. Like, come on, let's just chill. But no, I actually had received more beating threats than I've ever received. And I'm all for it. Like, Sean Strickland can come to my house and try to Raja Jackson me. We'll see how that goes. Oh, Sam says it's like watching a flash mob and think it happened organically. Well, one of the things that we've been doing for a long time here is defining our terms. So when I say like fakeability, we talk about like, okay, but if it's fakeable in the news, if it's fakeable in the movies, you can pretty much surmise they could fake it on the news, but not every time. But then there's the scale question, and then there's the question of, can it be done if it's not a closed set? Because you can do a lot on a closed set that you can't do in front of an audience. And then there's the scale thing, because there are people who don't believe in gorillas. They say, no, gorillas are guys in suits. And their evidence, they show a guy in a gorilla costume. So now you have the idea, the question here is like, well, is it fakeable at scale? So yes, you could fake a gorilla, but could you fake gorillas, plural, in every zoo? No, the scale is too problematic. You couldn't make that happen. Not to mention the anatomical specimens, the skeletons. There's just way too much. There's same thing with the people who say there's no such thing as panda bears or duck. Was it duck-billed platypuses? There's people who say there's no such thing as toucans. That these are just parrots, and somebody glues a beak onto it. But there's people who will believe a lot of things, and that's because they live in the metaverse, and their frame of reference is hyper-reality. Their frame of reference is simulation. That's why you have to get out of the metaverse. Okay, now, if you're a world stager, you are a metaverser. Your worldview is predominantly simulation. We are meat-versers here. So it's metaverse versus meat-verse. And the world stage is dominated by the meta, by the fake. But this is Realville. Yeah, zebras. Zebras, that's another one. So stupid 7-6. Yeah, I was like finding videos where they was like, oh no, these are just donkeys that they're painting with stripes. And I was like, well, what's going to happen during COVID when everybody's home? Are the zebra painters how are they going to do it? Are all the zoos going to just suddenly have these big sections just full of donkeys when the paint washes off? But the point is that like, people will believe anything. But we are not believers here. We have changed our operating system from belief system A and alternative belief system, or belief system B. So you have these two competing belief systems. We have here more of a methodology and an operating system. Like, which one do you think is superior? A belief system that you get secondhand from a source that you have faith in, or an operating system where the user decides on a case-to-case basis what is real and what is not. And if the facts lead you to conclude that the thing is real, you're not then a quote believer in it. You know it is. Like, I know the sky is blue. I don't believe it's blue. I know it. And that distinction is important because believers can only say they believe, whereas we can say, oh, we know. And if they believe something that we don't find enough evidence to support, we will say we are informed disbelievers. My disbelief has a foundation in facts. Facts that if you had, you wouldn't be a believer. So knowers and believers are the two categories. You're either a media believer or a media gnostic. Everybody you know is a media believer. It's like secondhand. It's passive. They receive it like mind viruses. There's not a lot of internal critical thinking or cogitation about the things that are just blasted out as headlines. These things are just assumed to be true. And being a believer is okay when it comes to your religion. You know, that's a different area. But you shouldn't be a believer when it comes to news. That's a completely different category. It's actually naive. I'm not a believer. If I don't know it to be true, I'll take the position of informed disbeliever, not a low information disbeliever. Like, oh, I don't trust that because it's mainstream. No, that's ad hominem. It's like, oh, because it's mainstream, it's not true. That's not a good argument. I know it's not, because mainstream isn't always wrong, or it's not always lying. But you have to qualify your claims. So the best your normie friends can say is, I believe this to be true. They can't say they know. If they say they know, they're lying because they wouldn't have evidence. And if they looked for evidence and they found it lacking, they wouldn't remain a believer. Okay, now here we have Mr. Nobody says here, and he's probably a shill because he's got 200,000 followers. What do they all have in common? So here you have Thomas Crooks, Tyler Robinson, and Luigi Mangione. Now, how come we got Thomas Matthew Crooks? We got his full name. I don't know Tyler Robinson's middle name, and I don't know Luigi Mangione's middle name. Mangione admitted to killing the CEO, so hopefully Candace Owens can work on that and start defending him because he admitted it, like Tyler did. Do you remember how the left loved and praised and worshipped Luigi Mangione? And many of them, fornicated with him. I mean, there's like a line of women outside the prison called the Mangionettes. The guy has groupies for life. He's probably got kids. Like, that's how insane people are for these celebrities, these psyop celebrities. Even the Son of Sam had groupies, and that guy's a goofball. Richard Ramirez, married in prison, groupies. Charles Manson, he was dating and he had girlfriends. Let's see who else. Ted Bundy. Now, I don't know how real these characters are, but I'm just saying there's something off about that. But what's weird is Tyler Robinson didn't get any groupies. And of course, Thomas Matthew, who was on a Black Rock movie, he died. But Tyler's only groupie was Candace Owens, to be honest. I think this. And you know what she is? Isn't she like 8 months pregnant? I was just thinking about that. When she was debating with Andrew Wilson, she's like, she's about to have a baby. Like, how long ago was the shooting? I gotta do some math here. Imagine that. Imagine Candace Owens' next baby is Tyler Robinson's. No, what I'm saying is that, what do they all have in common? People are answering the questions down here. I'm willing to bet they worked for BlackRock. I think they're all patsies. They all look like, okay, so these people are just going through. Node 33 says white males thinking they can get away from the crimes. Excellent students, quiet. They attempted to kill bad people. Oh, that's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about that. From the left's perspective, these are heroes. Mangione killed a CEO. Tyler killed a Nazi. And Thomas Crooks almost killed a Nazi. I mean, that's their thinking. It's very simplistic. They killed the bad guys. My answer was actors. These three are actors. Moving on here. Copperhead Media says dark hair and brown eyes. Okay, here's one person who has common sense. His name is Irvin. He says these were all involved in, this deserves a retweet, staged, scripted stories. All three are alive. Okay, we have an auto hoaxer here. Finally. It's like a needle in a haystack. Critterfest says, what would Tim's wrestling name be? What would my wrestling name be? I'll take suggestions. Etheric says, news and media was presented as almost a religion to be believed in, as they were supposed to be the intermediary between us and government. Can't blame them. Yeah, I think religion is there to unify a worldview. That's one of the things they do. You get everybody on the same sheet. You synchronize them, globally, because it's all based on astrology and the sun, the timing of their various holy days. And what media has done is has become the dominant world view shaper. It's supplanted and replaced religion. So if you just take the idea of, of deity out of it, its spirituality, and just look at it purely from its function, yeah, media is the new religion. And you could look at it as the mainstream and the alt as sort of like the mother church and then the Protestant, but they're both part of the same worldview. And this is why you see religion merging with media in this very clever way. They're syncretically blending religious concepts and structures and paradigm features into the mainstream. I mean, that was the point of Stephen King. We talked about this when it was happening, but you had the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When the alien comes out of the ship and there's this glowing white light behind it, he has his arms out like Jesus. E.T. has the glowing heart, like the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And then he does the finger thing, which is like God and Adam. And then in the latest one, Disclosure Day, the alien is presented in this white cage. They open it up and it looks like angel wings. So these are not attempts to mock religion. These aren't attempts to borrow content because, like, oh, they don't have any ideas, so let's go steal from the Old Testament. No, this is an amalgamation of the old world order propaganda and structure into the new. It's a science fiction religion, nascentology, alienology. And we talk about media being a hyper reality, meaning it's non-objective. It's populated with myths, with things that aren't actually real, fake events, martyrs, these various martyrs they create for us, these contemporary myths. Well, that's what religion does. Religion augments your experience of the real world with this secondary timeline of events, this pseudo-historical account of what happened before, and a bunch of stuff that doesn't exist that now you believe exists. So every religious book puts you in a hyper reality, and each one claims that it's the right one. Well, the mainstream has put even the most atheistic people into a hyper reality. And of course, that's because it's replacing or it's dominating. This guy named Hoy Johnson says, "What's your deal? Do you think Candace is a liar, trying to profit off her friend's money or murder?" So this guy's ripping on me, and I went to his channel, and he's one of these frothing at the mouth anti-Israel types. And I said, this may be above your present understanding. Her money comes from whatever intelligence agency she works for. Her media persona is an act. Same with Erica and Charlie. These are actors. Candace knows Charlie's not a real person. He's not dead. This is a long-term psyop. And he said to me, "Oh, you're one of those blanks who thinks everything is scripted." To what end? I said, mind control. They got you with the woke right mind virus. But their default again is, oh, you're one of those who say everything is fake. Nobody says everything's fake. But the people who say that you say everything's fake, ironically, think everything is real, which is just as bad as thinking everything is fake. So that's low information belief, low information disbelief. Neither of those are valid. We are informed disbelievers. Otto Hoax Hogan versus Jesse the Body Ventura. I don't know if that would work. I kind of like that one, though. Etheric Bliss says Tim Obama. Oh, I don't know what you're saying here. We're choosing wrestling names. I think Logan Paul is probably the next Hulk Hogan, by the way. He's starting to look, he's transforming into Hulk Hogan. Have you seen that guy? So Logan Paul was out there at some event and he got slapped by Tom Brady. Obviously fake. Then I see them at some football game and they're almost getting in a fight. It's so obvious to me. This is all just clickbait and kayfabe, and they're just, I don't know. There's no hope. We're going back into this. We're reverting. We're moving further away from objectivity. And I think it all has to do with generative AI, where collectively we've been reality impaired. I mean, that's what MindWar is supposed to do. But they're getting better. Like, for years, I've heard this constant refrain from InfoWars. Like, they're waking up. People are waking up. You just got to keep sharing the information. My neighbors are waking up. It's really bad. The New World Order is here, but they're waking up. I'm like, nobody's waking up. They're going deeper into trance. Healthy Caribou said, "Have you found anything interesting about the time Bush was reading the book at the school?" Oh, yes, I brought this up because, and I think this is an intriguing element here. I don't know the meaning of it, but look at George Bush. They're whispering in his ear, "America's under attack." And then you have Donald Trump, a bullet whizzing by his ear because America's under attack by the left. So you have these like kind of parallel narratives here. Same photographer got both these shots. He got this iconic shot of Bush and the Secret Service member, no, someone from his chief of staff. Here it is. Andrew Card. So you have this connection here, I think, with the ear. I think there's some symbolism here at the ear. But regardless, same photographer. That should tell you something. So Healthy Caribou says, have you found anything interesting about the book? And that's that pet goat. And here's what I think. The goat story that Bush was reading to the children, I think the goat story is a reference to the scapegoat of Leviticus. You have Osama bin Laden with a goatee, and what does he do? He's the scapegoat who escapes into the wilderness carrying the blame. And William Tyndale coined the phrase or the term scapegoat from Leviticus 16. And the story is the goat carries the sins of the village and they let it go out into the woods. And I think the goat's name is like Azazel or something. But William Tyndale combined escape and goat. Escape being a short form of escape. To translate a Hebrew ritual in Leviticus where a goat is sent into the wilderness bearing the symbolic sins of the people. So the goat story that George Bush was reading that day was actually the story, I think, of Osama bin Laden, the escaped goat. And that's why they made such a story of him escaping out into the deserts, into the caves. Big Enchilada says 2027 is the year of the goat. Didn't know that. Psyop Sidecar says, Tim, don't fault an artist for being super into ears. I have a couple of ideas of what it might mean. I think there's some symbolism here. I don't know for sure. But we have noticed this thing. Like, okay, the guy who photographed Trump doing the fight, fist thing is the same guy who photographed George Bush dodging the shoe. Which I think that's kind of, I don't know if that's necessarily as impressive. But then you have the guy who photographed RFK falling to his death 33 years later, photographs the falling man at the Twin Towers. So these iconic Pulitzer Prize winning award photos that correlate to psyops are kind of suspect to me. In fact, the Pulitzer Prize for a photo like that, it's basically, to me, that's like a Golden Hoggy Award. We used to have this award we would give to crisis actors. But these are insiders. So the guy who photographed the falling man on 9/11 participated in a psyop before because RFK's death was fake. Yeah, RFK Jr., the anti-vax guy with the habit of mutilating dead animals and walking barefoot in airplanes and taking his grandchildren swimming in sewage, that guy's father did not die in 1968. That was fake. He was dropped off at the Ambassador Hotel by the director of the Manchurian Candidate about a mind-controlled assassin who was friends with the Kennedys, who was friends with JFK even. So yeah, the guy who created the movie Manchurian Candidate drops RFK off at the hotel, and then a mind-controlled assassin comes and kills him. Come on. Too obvious. Critterfest says, I think Candace wants clout. She wants to be famous. See, you're wrong about that. Candace Owens is not Candace Owens. She's an actress who knows Charlie's not dead. And her role right now was scripted, just like Erica Kirk's role is scripted. It's not organic. It's not like Candace is independent and she's just doing her thing and she's just challenging the system. That's all lies. That's all theater. Candace Owens has no free will in this. And the evidence for this is simply that she was part of the Charlie Kirk psyop from day one. And part of every other psyop in the interim. And if you're part of one psyop, you're part of the psyop entertainment complex. It's a closed system. It's like a club. So no, you would be wrong in thinking, oh, Candace is a grifter. And she's just making, no, that's absolutely the wrong way to look at this. The evidence doesn't support that. But they want you to think that. Like, they want you to get mad at the wrestler, the heel. They want to get mad at the wrestler and hope the other guy beats him. Because as long as you're emotional about it, and you're like, oh, Erica's evil or Candace is evil, you're not intellectualizing it because you become emotionally engaged. But no, the whole thing's contrived. And the purpose of it is simply that it's a repeat of JFK. Post JFK, they coined the term conspiracy theorist. Post JFK, they amalgamated the skeptics into a big block of people they could control. The conspiracy theory subculture from JFK to moon landing to 9/11 and on is a government-created counterculture led from within. That has not changed. But now we're at, 60 years from the JFK thing. The youth today don't know about it, don't care about it. So they gave them, this is a generational psyop. They gave them their JFK moment. So now they can organize around this conspiracy theory. And who do they blame for the killing of JFK? Notice the pattern here. Israel. Oh, it's because he was going to not let them have nukes. Like, they have all these stories, but it always points to Israel. Who do they blame for 9/11? Who are they blaming for Charlie Kirk's death? There's a pattern here. And the pattern isn't that, oh, this group is doing these nefarious things. No, the pattern is that's the story. And if you're living in his story, if you're living in this hyper reality, then that might seem plausible to you. But no, it's fake. Joined by Authentic, says Jesus was vegan. I don't think so. Didn't he do the thing with the fish? Like, he manifested a bunch of fish and bread? Are you saying he didn't partake? All his friends were fishermen? So he wasn't a strict vegan. But if you're eating the flesh of a vegan, that's not vegan. Now, this is just cringe. The only thing that could be cringier than this is, so Andrew Tate, the child trafficker, abuser of women, who teaches classes on how to abuse women, he's in jail at the moment. I think he's been extradited. And I heard a rumor about why, but whatever the case is, he's this manosphere character who is designed to take a fall, I believe. But many of his followers, they say 100,000, but it looks like 30. They're outside of his prison cell doing push-ups for him. Like, push-ups. And this has been going on for days. Like, they're going to free him. I don't know. It's pretty sad. I think the only thing cringier would be if they actually sat there and just, like, cringed. Like, this is just so ghastly. I mean, really, what are they defending? They're defending a guy who's in prison for some pretty nefarious things. And these are the same people who want the Epstein files. Like, oh, we want to find out, who's human trafficking. It's like, what do you mean? You got these self-professed pimps, human traffickers, who take passports, isolate the women, take their money, and put them on the internet to make them into OnlyFans. Like, these guys, like, what's the difference between Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew Tate? These guys, I mean, it's like doing push-ups for Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, the Epstein lookalike is going to have a Netflix documentary soon. Nobody cares about the Epstein files anymore. Now they're more about celebrating this new celebrity who's a celebrity because he has a vague resemblance to Jeffrey Epstein. And he doesn't. Maybe the fittest flat earther might think they look alike, but I can't understand how people think this guy looks like Jeffrey Epstein. Is it facial blindness? But imagine being famous because you happen to resemble a notorious human trafficker. Okay, going through your comments. Authentic says, Christ's spiracy, thou shalt not... I'm not sure what you're talking about. I think I know what you're talking about, actually. It was a documentary. Big Enchilada says Epstein files. Yeah, the Epstein files. But look, they only care about the Epstein files once in a while. It got old. They moved on. Some celebrity probably distracted them. Like, okay, here's what it was. Epstein files, and then it was Jim Carrey's fillers and Botox. Totally caused them to pivot into something else. But the Epstein files were brought back, and when they were brought back, it was no longer Israel's compromising America's politicians on the island through Epstein. They changed it to the KGB, because now it was the left using the files to go after Trump. When I saw that, I was like, okay, wait a minute here. When the right's behind it, they're blaming Israel. When the left's behind it, they're blaming the KGB. Etheric Bliss says everything's downside up. Yeah, we live in the upside down. I think that's what they call it. Okay, take a look at this. John LeBon tweeted, this is John LeBon's, the all scripted worldview is asinine at best. Okay, nobody says all, but is he saying that nothing is scripted? Because if you're saying nothing is scripted, then you can't say that anything is fake. Because anything that's fake, by definition, will have to be scripted. If you're staging an event, there has to be a script, a plan, a program. Unless they're just ad-libbing it, like the PSYOP department, let's just make it up as we go. That's just not feasible. So what he's saying here is that it's asinine to think that anything is scripted. Well, nobody's saying everything. We're saying some things, historically significant things. So either he doesn't get this, which is sad, or he gets it and he's deliberately avoiding it. He calls himself the world's leading skeptic. The world's leading skeptic, but he doesn't think that anything's fake. So there has to be some kind of middle ground here. Maybe some things are fake. And maybe the some things are the dominant storylines. That's all I'm saying. But he says it's asinine to call things staged or scripted. Well, if it's staged, it is scripted. So that's kind of an asinine thing to say, I would say. It's a straw man. It's an asinine straw man because nobody is saying that. But here he is conjecturing over 50-year-old WWE predictive programming that we've already talked about a million times. It's like, look, it's not about, this isn't like, oh, this is some mind-blowing anomaly. What's actually happening here is the media fakery is an ongoing process, but truthers are given big, shiny objects to focus on for a long time. So like, okay, well, this event was fake, that event was fake, but everything else was real in the interim. They don't really connect that. No, there's a sequence. And not only that, but the fake events all exist on the same timeline, what I call the meta script. It's the secondary timeline that merges. And the convergence of real and fake happens in the minds of the believers. We who opt out of this fake history, we're not responsible for any of the stuff that's happening. Like, this is all on the believers. They're the ones who are bringing this about. It manifests with their consent. Okay, hey, Authentic, we don't have room here for religious proselytizers. So, sorry. You lose your wrench, and it's up to the other chat members if you're going to be allowed to stay or if they're going to crush you with their wrenches. So if you got a wrench and you see the guy Authentic, it's up to you. He's in here proselytizing for multiple agendas, and he doesn't seem to have a clue about what we're talking about. So it's up to you whether or not you want to banish him permanently. Abuse the power responsibly. A Newful says they will continue the fakery until the housing market collapses. No, the fakery never stops. This is the religion. Religions don't end. They don't just stop. This is a religion. It's a de facto religion. It's got God constructs. It has myths. It has martyrs. Old Testament, New Testament, based on scripture, right? That synchronizes everybody in this one paradigm. And the analogy here is we have our history, which is agreed upon lies, and then we have the living Bible, or the News Testament that builds on history, and that's never going to stop. The belief system that we have is the result of the process by which we are all synchronized every single day on the same set of stories. And the script from the future that merges into our present and then blends with the past, I call it the meta script. You could call it meta scripture. But no, it's not going to end. The only way it ends is at the level of the individual if you opt out, if you're a conscientious objector to the Psywar. And if you don't opt out, if you remain in it, you're culpable, you're compliant, and you're part of the problem. So if you're part of the media ecosystem, you are controlled opposition. Authentic says the golden rule. Look, I'm sorry, this isn't Sunday school. I mean, really, if you got to go preach your religion, go find a place where it's appropriate. Like, I'm not against you proselytizing. I've been dealing with okay, I was reflexively nice, and I have to break that habit. I'm trying to teach myself, I'm trying to train myself, or I'm trying to learn how to be cruel. Because being too nice is just really not a good trait. Nobody respects that. And these Jehovah's Witnesses came over, and I was listening to like loud music, and I was doing artwork. And the music should have scared them off by itself. It was like Morbid Angel or something. Like, not the kind of stuff Jehovah's Witnesses would listen to. So they show up, and we ended up talking about orcas, and I knew what they were doing. They were trying to manipulate me. They were trying to get me into accepting a premise. And so one of them said, well, doesn't it seem like the world's getting worse all the time? And in my optimistic mind, I'm thinking, no. And I can think of 1,000 things why things are better now than they were 10 years ago. Like, I'm an optimist. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think it's always been this way. But our perception of it might be inflated because now we have so much reporting and content in the internet. So now every bad thing everywhere is everybody's business all of a sudden. Nothing is local anymore. So my argument was that no, it's not getting bad. But the reason why they were pitching it was if I said things are getting bad, things are getting worse, they would have said, oh, that's because of Satan. And if you get our book, we can save you from that. And like, oh, you won't die. You won't die. The veil's going to be lifted and the dead are going to rise from the dead. It's like, okay, cool. Zombie day is coming. But anyway, I was polite, and they asked if they could come back. And I said yes. So they come back, and I end up ducking behind a desk that was out there in the shed. And I sat there for like 20 minutes just waiting for them to leave. And I wasn't like a coward. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm hiding from the JWs. No, I was hiding from myself. I was hiding because I didn't want to go out there and be the person I was last time they saw me. I didn't want to put on that fake persona. And that's what I realized. I was like, okay, that's a problem. Anyway, they showed up a couple days ago, and I point blank just lied to them. I'm like, no, that wasn't me. That was my brother. And they know I don't have a twin brother. I'm sure, maybe they don't, but yeah, I blatantly just gaslit them. And I could see their faces. Like, they knew I was lying, and they can't call me out on it. And they had to leave, and it was kind of jarring for them, I could tell, because I was so nice the first time. And I was thinking, okay, so this is what Duper's Delight feels like. Gaslighting people, controlling their minds. It actually felt powerful. So I understand where Candace Owens and these others come from, because they must get some kind of it's like a power trip. They get some kind of a rush out of controlling people. I just spoke these magic words, and these pests did a 180 and walked away. I banished them. It's like a spell. And now, was it wrong of me to lie? No. I decided that they're liars. They're liars because they're misrepresenting themselves. They're using rhetoric. They're using a strategy to manipulate me into accepting a faulty premise. And they believe a book of lies. So no, they're basically liars. And I think it's just, you got to fight psyops with psyops. So I feel totally fine about it. And I don't think they're coming back. Plain says, why do you think you're so polite like that? I've always been polite. In fact, I was very good at the customer retention when I did direct TV. I was handling angry customers who got ripped off, and my job was to keep them, to prevent them from canceling their services. And so I found that I'm really good at basically letting them vent, not insulting them, agreeing with them, and then getting them back on our team. But no, and that's probably manipulative. Because if you're being fake nice, you're being manipulative. And that was one of the things I realized. I was like, if I'm being fake nice, I'm just as bad as they are. And so that's why I had this moment where I had to rethink how I approach things. Ms. L says, tell them you're Shinto. Etheric Bliss says, that sound... No, there's nothing evil about it. They're evil. And for me to use their own tactic against them is smart. I mean, what kind of world do you think this is? You saying you would, I mean, really? Like, okay, there are times where it's appropriate to lie. Like, let's say you're in the back of a van and a serial killer is about to kill you and wants to know if you have a phone on you. And you do. And you might want to call the cops. Of course you're going to say no. Like, there are some instances where you have to lie, where it's justifiable. So no. It's the lie world order. But I hadn't done that in a long time. In fact, I can't think of another time where I've actually purposefully used the gaslighting as a tactic. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Going through your comments. Etheric says, liking it, and look, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like it. You're calling me out for saying I thought it made me feel powerful that I was able to just like lie to them and watch them leave and scatter like roaches. Like, it was jarring for them. And no, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a great feeling, because they were showing up for what reason? Did they have my best intentions in mind? No. They wanted to integrate me into a cult that believes in some kind of mass resurrection. They worship the Demiurge. It's a fundamentally evil organization. So I don't know where you're coming from. So no, I'm not going to be fake nice. Commenter says, type in Jurassic liars, Garrow bullies and terrorizes a viewer. I don't know if I'm going to. Look, I like Jurassic liars. We disagree on a lot of things. We have fundamentally different worldviews. But I think he's a good person. I don't think he's ever hurt anybody. Oh, Sam says they weren't ready for your counterattack spell. No, not at all. No, not at all. Because I think... So here's another thing, too. Another reason why I hate that organization. They use human shields. They send out... So you have these evil entities that are just basically loosh harvesting, soul-sucking entities that bring in a bunch of well-intentioned people, and then they direct them into their organization. It's like, there's nothing about it that I'm really in support of, but they send out these harmless, nice people, human shields, sheep, like sheep. And to me, that's so dishonest, because it's like, you wouldn't punch a guy with glasses. You're not going to be rude to somebody who's genuine. And I know they're genuine. I know they're genuinely believers in what they proclaim. And I'm like, okay, well, you're victims of a mind control cult. So it's kind of like, I'm in a position where I feel sorry for them. And to me, that's manipulation. It's emotional manipulation. It's like crisis actors. All right, well, we're not here to spread rumors about Jurassic liars, commenter. Honestly, this is not the place. Because I only judge people by my interactions with them. I've never had anything negative from him, other than the fact that he says I'm going to hell. But he genuinely didn't want me to die because he thought if I went to Seattle, I was going to get nuked. And he was genuinely concerned for my well being. And he told me to go to the East Coast instead. So if somebody tries to save my life and prevent me from going to what he believes to be hell, then yeah, he has good intentions, I think. Although he could be an operative and an agent, a disinformation guy, we don't know. Okay, I think Critterfest says, I have a hot Jehovah's Witness chick that comes here. Oh, come on. So you made out with her for an hour? Critterfest says that a quote, hot Jehovah's Witness chick came to his house and they made out. Did you make out on the black and white checker Masonic floor that your dad put down for you? Big Enchilada says Seattle is hell. I had a great time in Seattle. I didn't see anything that really looked like what I saw in 2020. They cleaned it up. But you know, it's the downtown is actually, it's beautiful, but those buildings are empty. And I think it's like maybe only 30% capacity. You have all these buildings, glass, you know, the glass is, it's all perfectly clear, everything's reflecting everything else. It's so quiet. I didn't see anybody. I was alone. It was strange. I was basically hanging out near the Space Needle, and I walked around pretty much all night because I couldn't get a hotel room because the soccer people bought them all, or they rented all the rooms. And so I just spent the night walking around Seattle, and I didn't see anything. Like I mean, I wouldn't walk around downtown Albuquerque because I value my life, but Seattle, no, I thought it was rather nice. Although I think I was psyoped because I think that they had moved a lot of the people who would ordinarily be on the streets to some other section of the town. Like those Potemkin villages, I think I got hoaxed. Plain Dakota says he could be gacked up as well. See, I didn't know what gacked was until the internet. It means that he's powdering his nose. Okay, well, we're a little off topic, but mainly I just wanted to catch up on the Twitter feed, and I'm announcing tentatively, I don't have a specific date, but there is going to be an auto hoaxer 9/11, the equivalent, the psychological equivalent, like a psychological 9/11. We're speaking metaphorically here. There's going to have to be some kind of coordinated, we'll just say PR stunt or some kind of series of events that make it impossible to ignore the existence of Realville, the war on fake reality. It needs to be put out in the open. And I have some ideas. Yeah, let me bring this up because I did actually find an article. Somebody asked about Seattle. Seattle games. There was some news story I saw that said that they had actually, here it is. Okay, I got psyoped. I fell for a psyop. Ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, Seattle had a massive, intensive cleanup and security downtown and in the stadium, and they removed 295,000 pounds of debris. That's a lot of needles. Clearing the homeless encampments and increasing police patrols. Critics say it was a temporary fix for international visitors and not a solution. Okay, so the reason I didn't see any graffiti or encampments or debris is because the 300,000 pounds of debris was moved somewhere else. So I was there at a really good time. I was safely walking around unarmed, no fear for my safety whatsoever. After that, I was like, I got to move here. This is great. But no, I think if I went back there now, it would probably be different. So it just shows you, though. It shows you how, you know what the Potemkin village concept is. The story is some queen or something was being transported across the country, and they were putting up mock villages ahead of her. And these are like two-dimensional cardboard or two-dimensional buildings, and it made it look like the country is more developed than it actually is or was. I want to get the definition, because I've heard that North Korea is the same thing, where if you go in the areas that are designated, everything looks fine. Okay, so the Potemkin village is a fake structure set up to deceive people and make the situation better than what it is. Yeah, that's what they did. The phrase comes from an 18th century legend about a statesman, Gregory Potemkin, who built portable fake towns to impress Empress Catherine the Great. Okay, they built cardboard painted villages fronts along the river, even happy moving crowds and livestock to fake deep regional wealth. Once she passed, they moved the props into the river and sent them down for the next stop. Okay. Okay, I see what happened there. You know, I think that's kind of funny to consider that they've been doing like this type of fakery, deception has been a part of the human experience from the beginning. Like this is not new. But I'm not the leading skeptic in the world, but I am a top tier auto hoaxer, and I got totally fooled. Yeah, exactly, Diana. Like the movies they use in spaghetti westerns. All right, well, appreciate the comments. We'll be live in Discord. Go to ips.monster. There's a pretty significant development in a month, which is going to be the second edition of the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. And we have this ongoing project, which I call the Great Deconstruction. And this is essentially an attempt to catalog and systematize all of our observations regarding the correlation between fake events, programming in media, like entertainment, and also mass casualty simulations and drills. And when you see how systemic it is and how far back it goes, it's paradigm shifting. So that's the next project. Go to ips.monster to make sure that you get all of the updates. And yeah, look, Seattle was empty. It was like a ghost town. Looking back at it, I was thinking, well, this makes perfect sense because if they were going to do like a 9/11 like event or fake a nuke in Seattle or fake something nearby, it would be very easy to wipe out this section and not have mass casualties. In fact, I'll post the archives tonight for my conversation with Gemma, and there's a link that she gave me to these breakdowns of the hollow towers. How the perception was that the Twin Towers were like beehives bustling with activity and people, but the truth of it is they were mostly empty. And it would not be difficult at all to have emptied the towers out in advance of the event, especially considering they were doing so many drills at that location in New York on that day and other places. Angst G says Elon Musk is a Potemkin billionaire. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that as well. He's a heavily scripted character. Elon Musk is not real. Like, yeah, he walks around, he breathes. He's a person playing the role, but he's an actor. They all are. And is he a real billionaire? Did he actually earn that? No, I don't think that's the case. All right, we'll continue this conversation likely tomorrow at the same time. Have a great evening. Appreciate all the channel support. Subscribe to my Patreon or subscribe at Substack if you want to support the channel. And with that, you get live stream notifications, archives, newsletters, and I'm going to do an updated series of videos with whiteboards so we can introduce more people to this concept of the world stage, the timelines, and how it all makes more sense than the alternative / conspiracy version of things. So we'll see you in Discord.